What's up, humans? Welcome to another episode of Humans of the Multiverse.
Our goal is to bring people together by featuring the stories of our friends from all over the globe.
We want to share our interests with the world, and that's why we started this show.
So if you enjoyed this episode, share it with your friends. Press the like button and subscribe to our channel.
And if you have a compelling story to tell, send us an email.
Thanks for watching.
Dave Fitzpatrick is a conspiracy theory researcher with a special interest in ancient history. He's a 3-time attendee at the Cosmic Summit and has had the fortune to attend a tour of Egypt with Uncharted X's Ben van Kerkwyk. Dave is also passionate about sharing ancient history with schools in his community. He has a YouTube channel called The Great Awakening, and you can interact with him on X under his handle, The Great Awakening. Links will be in the description. We hope you enjoyed this discussion on everything modern and ancient mysteries and conspiracies. Thanks. Our logo's on the website and everything, so I at least need a shirt, you know what I mean?
You guys just got thrown into the frying pan.
Well, we dove in head first. We looked at the frying pan and said, "You see those eggs in there? Let's be one of them."
Yeah,
I think that's cool.
It's basically what happened, and we've been received well. George, I think, thinks we're cute or something, so he's been very supportive. Just in that, like, we're very enthusiastic about this stuff, and really supportive of what George is doing, and so that's why I think he's been so nice to us, and it's been really a great experience. But you didn't start on this journey with Cosmic Summit. This will be your 3rd time going, but you started on this journey a long time ago, didn't you?
Way long. So, and this will be interesting to chat about. So I know I was no more than 5 years old. And this would have been back in early 60s.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in 61, so early to mid 60s. And there used to be Phillips 66 gas stations. And I think that's where my folks got this book. It was the first edition of some set of encyclopedias, and maybe they got this. They only got one book, and it was Aardvark to Army or something like that was the title of the book. And in there was a page on arrowheads, and there was a little drawing with this, it was like a burial and a skeleton in the jar, and then there were some arrowheads that were pictured. And I can remember vividly continually asking my mother to get that book out of the closet. It was up on an upper shelf and I couldn't reach it, so I had to ask her to give me that thing, and I would just sit there on the floor mesmerized by those arrowheads. And they're just simple, drawings of arrowheads. And I half wonder how many people, if you look back in your life, that have had something like that happen. And then in my case, fast forward, again, I grew up in Columbus, originally born in Columbus, lived here all my life. And we moved out to suburban town, Pickerington, suburb of Columbus, and it was all rural farmland. Totally different from, and this was in the middle of 2nd grade when we moved there. Country, a lot of farmers. Kids that would wear, I go to school and see a kid wearing a belt buckle, cowboy boots, and think, what the heck, I can't believe they're letting him wear that in school. It's just totally different.
Culture shock.
Yeah, so it was middle 2nd grade. My brother and I, we had a creek that ran through our subdivision, and it dried up shortly after we moved there. And we moved there, it was in winter, and this was in the summer. But it dried up, and we thought that was the coolest thing. So we're walking the dried up creek bed, and I sticking underneath a stone, there was a bottom part of an arrowhead sticking out. And the minute I saw that, it was a zoom back to that book, and I knew instantly what I'd found. And I mean, I was on cloud 9. So my dad took the thing to work, and these guys he worked with said, they find those things typically out in farm fields. Well, what do you know? We had farm fields all around our subdivision. And so the first time I go out, I find one. And then it became literally an addiction. And I can't tell you the hours. I could be in the worst mood, and I would go, through the years, my teen years and all, I'd get mad, something happened with my parents and get mad. And so the first thing I'd do is go out in the farm fields. All I have to do is find one arrowhead, boom, my attitudes change. I'm raring to go again. But again, it's like, I look back and think, it's almost like, was I reincarnated and this was the plan for this life, was to get into this stuff? It's weird. And I'll tell you what, at the Cosmic Summit, you mentioned the Cosmic Summit. When you go there and you meet other people, there's so many other folks that have similar stories like this, where weird events happen, and then boom, they're doing what they're doing. So anyway, yeah, my that goes clear back to when I was 5 years old, is where seeing a little graphic in a book got my interest sparked. And the rest is history.
I actually found that. So look anything like this?
There you go. Yep, that's the book. And
do you still have? Do you have it?
I do have it. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I've got somewhere back here, but I said the reason I know I was only 5 years old, or couldn't have been any older, is the scribbles in the thing. I mean, I didn't know how to spell or anything, and but I'm awesome. Not kidding. It would be funny to go back in time and see how many hours. I literally just could not stop looking at that page. Just weird.
That's funny. I didn't even put two and two together. Little Golden Books are the gold standard of children's books. Everyone has read those. I didn't even realize they had put out an encyclopedia. I read plenty of Golden Books as a kid. I never knew they had an actual encyclopedia under that banner.
Yeah. And I still have that thing, amazingly. So
that's awesome.
The exact same one?
That's the only one I have. It's the same book.
Okay, the same one for when you had when you were a kid.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So then you're a kid, were you still into this stuff as you became a teenager? Did you get into, what teenagers typically get into? Or what did that look like? And what was the access to information? We're talking the 70s now, right? So what was the access to information like? What were you being taught in school about this stuff?
Good question. So, back again, you're looking at 60s into the 70s. You had a lot of guys that, my age, that were, you could even bring a gun on the school bus during hunting season. I'm not kidding. Back in those days, they had, it was so a lot of guys hunted and trapped and, did that outside the sporting activities and stuff. And my hobby was, again, I just lucked out. There were a number of mostly archaic sites. You had Mound Builder, Adena, Hopewell, Fort Ancient type stuff. So, and the funny thing is, a lot of the kids, even teachers of the stuff, you find an arrowhead and they think, oh, it's only, a couple hundred years old, but wow, that's pretty cool. And it's like, no, these things are thousands of years old. Yeah. And I go, fast forward to now, I periodically will go give speeches on this stuff to middle schoolers. And it's amazing how many of them have no idea that they're walking the land they're walking on, which used to be in many cases farm fields. This stuff was there. So anyway, I ended up, through my teen years, it was a passion of mine. But to find any information on what I was finding, interestingly, there was a neighbor kid that was on a baseball team, and one of his coaches collected artifacts. So one day he tells his coach, hey, there's a kid in my neighborhood. He has a whole bunch of these things. And so Mr. Green was his name. That's what I called him, Mr. Green. His name was Richard Green. But anyway, he drove this cool VW Bug. It was sort of like a lime green color, and he wore the Brute 33 aftershave. And I thought, man, that stuff smells good. And he would come over every couple of months through the summer. You usually just hunted these things in the summer. And he knew everything about all this stuff. And that, and again, you see some of these archaeologists that criticize others that are collecting this stuff. Oh, you're tearing up sites, and you should leave it there for us to do the professional analysis on this stuff. And to a point, yes, but these were farm fields, and currently these very farm fields are all nothing. Every single one of them are subdivisions, packed in housing, and none of those folks, I guarantee you, know what their houses are sitting on. So he educated me quite a bit. And then I subsequently got into, there's some local chapters of Archaeological Society of Ohio. I joined the chapter, and they'd have quarterly meetings, also yearly meetings. And then subsequently, come to graduate high school, and I'm like, well, what am I going to do? So it was between archaeology and geology, because I love rocks as well. And I made the decision to major in geology and then minor in archaeology at Ohio State. Part of the reason I decided to go the geology route was, even back then, now we're talking the early 80s, you weren't going to get grant money for whatever you're interested in researching if it didn't fit the mainstream narrative. This is back in the early 80s. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know about that. So I thought, well, let's just do geology. And if something doesn't work out, then maybe I can fall back on archaeology. Well, I'm starting my fourth year, and the field was looking abysmal because the oil industry was tanking. The job market was just pathetic, unless you wanted to teach the stuff. I was like, well, I don't want to do that. And so then it was a total, this is sort of funny. Anybody that's gone to college can probably share a similar experience, but I was taking a chemistry class, and it was a class that I had not signed up for, and I had to go to work, but you had to show up the first class and say, hey, take the attendance, I'm out of here, and I'm getting my class changed. And this woman would not let me out of that class. It was a lab. I hated chemistry. Oh, that's the one subject to this day I could not grip. And it was organic chemistry. Oh, and I'm walking out. I said, screw you. I'm out of here. I got to go to work. And I walk out. Some other guy the same way. He was pissed off, and he had to go to work. And I just decided right there and then, I'm done. You know what? I'm starting 4 years, and I was on a scholarship. My parents weren't too happy about it. But I just did a 360, got into business management, did market research, and kept it as a passion. And so there's the 10-minute dissertation on it.
Okay, but to clarify at the end, did you stay at Ohio State, or did you go somewhere else for business school? You still finished business school, right?
Yeah. So I left Ohio State, and then I started, it's a financial institution. It used to be called Bank One, and they subsequently are now JP Morgan Chase through a bunch of mergers. And the beauty of working there was they also covered any tuition other than books. If you, so I'm like, well, and the other interesting thing too, it wasn't until after I got out of Ohio State, I went to Franklin University. It's more business school here in Columbus. Really good education. I can't say enough about that university. At any rate, yeah. So I majored in marketing, got my degree, also got an associate's degree. But it was at that point, my outlook on getting an education really changed. It was not about, what a pain in the butt. I got to go sit in this lecture hall with 500 people and then sit with a TA that didn't know English well and trying to understand what the hell he's saying. But then it was like, man, I can't educate myself enough. And I figured, hey, if it's being paid for, I'll just keep, I go to work and then take night classes and did that for several years to get my degree. So yeah, that was different. Not only did I start a profession in market research with a financial institution. At the same time, I was continuing education in business management and marketing, and then subsequently, that was 15 years of that. Left that, got into real estate, which I'm still doing to this day, and semi-retired. And then going and being self-employed has allowed me the time to really dig into this stuff. So
very cool. So during that time when you were working and you weren't doing the archaeology and the geology thing, you were in business, were you feeding that passion at all through documentaries or books or anything like that?
Well, I guess it was not just art. And I think too, a lot of people that it's sort of weird that are into the ancient cultures, and at least have open minds to, is there a possibility that this is all maybe a little different than what we're taught? I was interested in UFOs. They used to have UFO magazines. I don't know if they still do, but back in the 70s,
probably.
I've still got them in my attic. Boxes of them. It'd be funny to pull those things out and look at them now. I mean, but back then, I was just fascinated with that. Somehow, I don't know how, I got into Edgar Casey and his writings on, Egypt and the stuff that he put out in particular that evolved around. I mean, he put out stuff, medical things and Egypt and all kinds of stuff, but the Egypt stuff is what really fascinated me for whatever reason. But yeah, outside of work, I kept this as an interest, but more, interestingly, I guess, I started getting into, well, let's see, 9/11 happens in about 2005, roughly. So it's about 4 years later, I'm guessing. There was a documentary that came out called 9/11 in Plain Sight.
Seen it?
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Well, again, this is another one of those weird things. If I remember right, it was probably a New Year's Eve night. Our neighbors had a get together, and my wife went over. I was feeling ill, and so I ended up staying home, and somehow came across that documentary. And I watched that, and when it was over, I was just like, oh, no way. No, I was totally, and I was a big Bush supporter. And after I watched that, I was so numb. I'm like, there's no way that we could have had a part to possibly play in bringing down those towers. And my wife came home, and I told her about that thing, and she thought I went off my rocker, because from that moment to present, especially right shortly after that, for months, I was on my computer 4+ hours a day. I'm digging into anything and everything related to that whole 9/11 event, trying to see, could this have really happened? I just was like, it was that point that my worldview was totally out the window. And I look back, and that is probably the best thing that could ever happen. And I think most people now, where they just clam up, until they have to, it's up to them to make the choice to open up their worldview. And there's a whole process to it. You get pissed off. You get everything you've been taught. Are you kidding me? Is this a lie? So yeah.
It's a paradigm shifter. That's why, like whether it's 9/11, COVID, Vietnam, we could do it about the Vietnam War if you want. You could do it about most of this stuff. If you go down that rabbit hole, you walk through that door, like you said, your whole worldview has to go out the window, because if the institutions are willing to do one thing, what else are they willing to do, right, Mike?
Yes. And another thing I want to point out, whenever you have a paradigm shattering experience, whether it's on the scale of a national tragedy or something personal, like an involuntary out of body experience, everyone that has that has the same decision to make. Do I retreat, clam up, go find some people to tell me what I've already been told before, and listen to the same thing over and over again? Or do I embrace the fact that and I've got data in front of me now that demands that I think about things in a new way. And you
Yeah,
obviously began thinking about things in a very new way.
totally. And then sort of off of this, so that was 2005, and then leading up to that, and my mother passed away in 96 of lung cancer, and she had hospice. So I thought, and they were just phenomenally wonderful people that helped take stuff off the table you didn't have to worry about, so you could focus spending time with your loved one that was going through what they were going through. And I thought, someday I got to get into that stuff. So then here's another one. So there was a gal I was dating who was interested in crystals and, the sort of out there stuff.
We've all had one of those, yeah.
And so they had a convention here in Columbus, and I go to this thing, and they had folks that could read your auras, all that stuff, and the crystals and gems, and I was into the rock stuff, and I'm like,
Yes.
wow, this is pretty wild. And here's this guy, Daniel Brinkley, who had a near-death experience. I don't know if you're familiar with Daniel or not, but he had he was dead for 28 minutes. He was struck by lightning, and he had a really famous book, and there's actually a documentary movie on his life that came out. It's really good. Saved by the Light was his first book. He was just a mean asshole. It was a Marine. And when he had that event happen to him, it totally changed his life. And he subsequently then set up an organization that did hospice work with veterans. So I ultimately get pulled into he had a chapter here in Columbus. And part of being part of that organization, you had to go through a 3-day intensive training that if you want to get into hospice work, you have to go get certified. And I mean, this was the most, it was over a weekend. It was like Friday, 5 o'clock to 10 p.m. and then Saturday, Sunday from 8 in the morning to 10 or 11 at night, solid. And it was the most gut-wrenching, again, one of these things. It's like, man, everybody should go through this thing. Everybody, I don't care if you want to do hospice work or not. It really makes you think about death and what people are going through emotionally and all as they're going, through their into their life. Things you haven't said, should have said, wish you would have said, all that stuff. Very rewarding. And so then, then I'm going from there. There's an organization called International Association of Near-Death Studies. And they have chapters to this day all around the country. Most of the folks that go to those meetings, they have one here in Columbus. It's been a while since I've been to one. But most of the folks are people that have had a near-death experience, and they have trouble speaking to other people about it. And so it's almost like a cosmic summit. They get to go there, and there's other people like-minded thinking, and they get to share their experience without being any worry of being criticized for what they went through. Well, I went there just to see what it was all about. And a sideline to that, a gal I was dating at the time lost her father suddenly, and we went and heard this woman speak, and it really tore her up. And she was actually the head of this Columbus chapter, and suggested, why don't you come out to the our organization? You might help feel more at peace knowing that your dad is in a good place. And when you listen to these people and what they've gone through, there's no way they're lying. I mean, material stuff is out the window. Everything is about love. And one of the things, the folks that have had these longer term near-death experiences tend to have the deeper ones, these life reviews. And Daniel, he had one of those things, but basically, and I find this really fascinating, and I think it's something that ought to be taught to our kids, frankly. But he said, what you do is you relive your life, every single second of it, but you also relive it from the point of view of the other person that you're interacting with. So if you're an asshole to somebody, you get to feel the pain you inflicted on them. Vice versa, if you were loving or you cared or what, anyway, you feel the emotions of your effects on that person through all your life. And his comment was, you know, he's some people ask, well, what do you think Hitler went through? He said, oh, well, just imagine if Hitler did everything that he supposedly did with all those people, he now will feel the pain of what all those people went through. So anyway, I think what a way to live your life. You know, if in fact that's what happens at the end of your life, you review and see how you did. What a great way to live your, or at least try. I mean, you know, you're still going to be an asshole. I mean, there's no, everybody isn't.
Yeah.
But
people like to relate, you know, near-death experiences or dying to certain experiences with psychedelics, and that's my time doing psychedelics, which isn't super extensive. It has a similar effect where it like you see yourself in a different light. You see how you were an asshole the other day to your brother or whatever, and you know it hits you. You feel it, and so I think that's why they're doing a lot of research nowadays on psychedelics for people at end of life stage. And so I agree with you, Dave, about how everyone should have some sort of experience like that. I had a similar experience working at a hospice as a nurse's aide when I was in college. And I was there for about 6 months, and then they transferred me to the state mental health hospital, which is a whole different other story. But yeah, it's definitely a mind-opening experience as well. And so it sounds like you know, it's that you had those experiences in the late 90s, you said, in the hospice.
Yeah, so I was actively involved with Daniel's organization up until it was probably in the early 2000s.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the 9/11 thing happened, and then it's like off to the races.
Then it was off to the races. Yeah. Then it was. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'm just going to say then it was off to the races, and it wasn't necessarily just archaeological related. It was you know, here I had everything that I thought was the truth was thrown out the window, and now I'm digging. Like I said before, my computer was just tabs all over the place. I'm taking notes. You know, I typically I'll grab. I'm horrible. I'll grab the nearest piece of paper and I'll just start writing. And then where did I put that thing? You know, 2 hours later. But no, and then I was just going down topic to topic. And then, let's say around 2017, are you guys familiar with the whole Q thing that came out? Basically, if you're not, but it was some anonymous person was posting on 4chan. I think it's called 4chan at the time. You know, again, I'm not. It's like the underbelly of the internet.
Yeah.
Where basically you're somehow assigned a unique ID, but it's almost impossible for someone to determine who it is that's doing the posting, other than that ID is a unique identifier, and okay, that's the same person that's posting whatever is getting posted. So ultimately became known as Q, and I think with there are ultimately just under 5,000 of these things put out there, just different drops. And I came across that stuff. It started in October, the end of October 2017. It was in November that I came across, and it might have been through a guy named Jordan Sather. I don't know if I think he's still out there. I'm not sure, but anyway. And I read the first couple of them and I thought, oh my God. And it was something that I thought I for some reason, it was like, this is it. This is what I think I'm here for, that we're going to go through something and it's going to be huge. It's going to ultimately be good. It could probably be bad initially to try and get through all this stuff, but in the end, it's going to be a phenomenal thing for humanity. And there's probably people that are going to watch this podcast and think, Dave's gone over the edge. The very people that would say something like that are the very people that'll criticize the whole Q thing without having gone in and read the stuff. And it's fascinating today. I mean, you think about this, it's been almost 8 years ago. Some of the posts that were put out there are coming to fruition.
Yes.
A lot of it was put out there in the form of questions. So sort of a Socratic method of learning. So here's the question, go find the answer. And then ultimately what happened, it was literally an army of people were created to go dig up and try and find the answers to some of the stuff that was posted out there. And like anything, you had folks out there that were clearly, out to undercut the whole thing. But I think the whole purpose, looking back, the whole purpose of this Q thing was to get people to question everything. Don't just take verbatim what somebody's telling you. Go out, do your research. And there's several areas in there where the Q thing was saying, whoever Q was, a lot of people think it's Trump and a handful of folks right next to him.
Right.
To basically, you're the new media. You are going, and by golly, that is actually what is happening. And again, you get back to these mainstream folks that are critical of people like us that are out there. We have a passion for whatever it is we have a passion for. We might not be right about everything. And if you're not, and you make a goof, just own up to it. But you got these hardcore people that are so set in whatever it is they're focused on. They take it as an insult. I don't know. I mean, I think they're protecting their own money, or it's a combination of things. But anyway, I'm digressing. So anyway, yep, I got into that stuff for quite a while and had a Twitter account, built a good following, mostly involved all around the Q stuff. Ended up getting my account deleted. I had 3 strikes. The 3 strikes was, one of them was a link to Biden's laptop. It was absolutely his laptop I think it was housed in Taiwan, maybe. I mean, the second it was like it was being watched, the second I hit the enter key on that link to the tweet, boom, my account was disabled.
Well, at that time, the administration was colluding with that party was colluding with Twitter to do just that.
It was one of the most highly curated and carefully detailed narratives in the media at that time.
Exactly. Yeah. And look at it. It's out there, and then you still have people. No, so that was all AI. Are you kidding me? I mean, there's documents, there's pictures. Some of them are just horrendously graphic. Video.
Even the platform, the Q platform in general, has been sort of demonized by the quote unquote mainstream media as like, so that when people hear that, they just go, that's the people. That's those are the far right, right? It just goes from there. And there's a bunch of people who just exist in that paradigm where they're obviously on both sides of each aisle and argument and everything. There's going to be people who are out to lunch, right? But there are people who exist in the middle that are just like, Matt, that's nothing, that's nonsense, I'm just going to stay here in my safe space. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on the show, is because you don't stay in the safe space. You like to ask these questions, and you like to dig through them, and I really like that about you.
Well, and I think it would be, if people would just be more open. And I get I'm one that I try and not do the personal attack thing.
Sure.
I can understand.
That's helpful.
Yeah, I can understand why a lot of it happens. And I'll be honest, there's a good bit of it that is initiated by, I don't know, I guess the other side, whatever you want to call it. But and then some folks, they want to defend themselves, and so they'll attack right back. My thing has been to just, hey, I don't care how, I don't care. A neighbor of ours at our prior subdivision he prided himself in being further left than Nancy Pelosi. We would have these backyard debates, and we'd get a fire going, usually in the fall. Get a fire going in the pit, get the beer out, and 3 hours later, after just back and forth. Martin, Scottish guy. I love the guy to death. I mean, and my wife would think we were going to get into fisticuffs at some point because we would get so into it, each of us standing our own ground. But at the end of the day, we hugged and it was a blast, and that's what it should be. It shouldn't be this, I have to believe that some of these guys that are just so vehemently against labeling people pseudo archaeologists, whatever you want to call us, the researchers, they're just either they're worried that their job history is in dire straits, which unfortunately there's some of that. I think it's just going to happen, or they're afraid they're going to get exposed, or both.
Or sometimes Dave and I like to point out, I think both parties on opposing sides of a particular argument, perhaps archaeology, they realize they're in a mutually beneficial arrangement. And if they keep arguing with each other vehemently, it draws clicks, views, ratings, that type of thing.
Yeah.
We kind of try to gently bring awareness to that, because that's where a lot of the mudslinging goes on, because the more violent the mudslinging is, the more people click on it. It's rage bait, or what do you call it, outrage, type of material. We don't need that in archaeology. We just need to get answers.
Exactly.
It's unhelpful. It's funny how archaeology in the story of our past gets lumped into this like areas of like where it's called conspiracy theory or whatever. This moniker of conspiracy theory is turning out to be a badge of honor these days. But it's funny because it's like, what is conspiratorial about people outside of the mainstream, outside of the institution, asking a bunch of questions? And then it seems to be the conspiracy would be to be in controlling the narrative and within the institution more than anything. Am I right?
Yeah. And it's funny. I if I had to give myself a label, I would probably call myself a conspiracy theorist with a special interest in ancient history. But I'm not the one that's pushing any kind of conspiracy theory. I'm just researching them.
Right.
Yeah, you're just looking for answers, and you're not going to turn your head or whatever or look down on something just because it might shake up your paradigm a little bit. It's like you're looking for that.
Exactly.
A lot of folks in conspiracy circles start out as simply truth seekers, people that are unsatisfied with the simplistic childhood answers they were given. They go on digging deeper, and then they start to realize, hey, wait a minute, secrets are a real thing. Yeah, people keep secrets. Sometimes they keep them together. Sometimes they do things with them. Like it's a natural conclusion when you weigh all the evidence.
Absolutely.
Humans conspire. It's like one of the things that we do, and especially when it comes down to control of information and financial systems and all that stuff. So 9/11 was your big. So we're gonna get a 9/11 flag. So good. 9/11 was your big eye opener. We haven't got. It's been a few weeks. I wanted to talk about, without alienating anyone, without making anyone feel guilty or anything like that, but because for me, so first of all, just to back up a little bit, 9/11 I kind of bought, and then I went to Iraq in the military, and that's when I realized the whole thing, something was wrong. When I got there, it was not what I thought it was, and I'm not going to get into that, but I came back and I started digging into all that stuff, and realizing the global war on terror was bullshit. So let's get one of those too. So that was part of like what first opened my eyes. But then I started living my life. And, I was aware of the archaeology thing, because I've been following Graham Hancock and the Zahi Hawass thing for a couple decades. But then what really like lifted the veil for me and made me decide I'm going to not trust anything right off the bat and look into everything was COVID. What was a guy like you who'd been going through the Q stuff and already into all this stuff? What was COVID like for you? Because you must have saw right through most of the BS in relation to COVID pretty quickly.
Well, I tell you, yeah. Oh, I was totally. Oh no. This is not. Something's not right here. And I got to attribute having gone through all of this other stuff and taken the time to research and start questioning everything. Had I not done any of that, I very well would have gone in and been one of the ones to have been vaccinated. I know my wife would have. I mean, it was because of my research and digging that she didn't. But really, the big one it was Dr. Zelenko. I don't know if you remember that guy. He's since passed away, but he was a doctor in New York City, and he was remember now people are getting booted off of Twitter right and left for anything that didn't go the narrative. They were censoring right and left.
Anything to do with masks, anything to do with vaccines, anything to do with alternative ways to treat, even if ivermectin is the big one. Even just if you were talking about, hey, go take vitamin D and zinc and go get more sunlight and all that stuff, you wouldn't not get booted from Twitter, but you get pushed down to the bottom of the algorithm. That's what they were doing.
Exactly. And the funny thing was, well, it wasn't funny, but I could look through it because when I started seeing these videos from, say, Dr. Zelenko or anybody else that were suggesting the mere possibility of trying quercetin, vitamin D, sunlight, stuff over the counter, and they're getting booted off of YouTube for stuff like that, it's like, okay, then they must be telling the truth. I mean,
that's how I look at it now.
Now it's everything like that. Okay, well, if the media is going one direction, the mainstream media, then I need to look the other way and accept the opposite as truth. So that was the case for me. I mean, I ended up contracting COVID. I ended up having long COVID, and I know where I got it. I got it from the daggone ophthalmologist, but that's beside the point. But when I reached out to my doctor, I wanted to try and either get ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, and he refused to prescribe either of them. He was more interested.
Horse paste.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. He was more interested. Now this is at that time there was a lot of the new technology was to talk to your doctor over the phone, so you didn't have to go in and visit. So over the phone, he's like, well, he wanted me to go get the COVID test. I said, I don't need a COVID test. I can't smell the frickin' jar of Vicks mentholatum rub stuffed up in my nose. I've got the stuff. So no, he refused to prescribe it. So I actually ultimately went online to get a prescription. And I go over to CVS. This is where then it's like, now I'm really getting pissed off. I go to get a prescription filled, and I got it filled the first time. Second time I go to get it, they refused to fill. This is CVS. They refused to fill the prescription, and so I subsequently find out the guy ended up. First, I ripped the lady. I asked for her license number because I was going to report her ass. And then I thought, well, I'm going to go back in there and try one more time to get my prescription, and I'm going to film it.
To me.
So I got video of it, but I didn't. It's mostly audio. I didn't want to get the guy on camera. Very nice guy, young guy, and ripped him a new one for not, there in the store, kindly, for not filling the prescription. And as I drove home, he called me back and he said, if you want to come and get your prescription, I'm hanging up my lab coat at the end of the day. And he admitted to the fact that it was his superiors that was driving this, that they were telling them not to fill any prescription for ivermectin if it was specifically somebody wanted it specifically for COVID. And there was
It's
another.
one of the safest medications in history. I just want to point out it's a Nobel Prize winning medicine that's been around for over 100 years. That literally has zero side effects, if any. It might 0.01 side effects. It's crazy.
They weren't prescribing the horse formula, people. How can you trust any media outlet that ever insinuated that ever again about any topic ever?
I know, it's so wild to me that you would walk into with a doctor's prescription in the United States of America and not get your prescription. That's so crazy to me. And the other thing was the insistence that you get this antigen test, which it literally said on the FDA website that they were using it for emergency use purposes, and that it has that antigen test had both positive and negative reports. Like it wasn't accurate at all. It's not what it's designed for in any way, shape, or form. And to me, it was all like there was a big money thing going on there, right? It's like how many shots can we give out? How many tests can we do? How many masks can we sell? It's like, I wonder how much Johnson & Johnson made off of all that stuff.
I'm going to try to say this as vaguely as I can about the tests to not describe my experience personally, but working for a company at that time, if you came down with COVID-like symptoms, you had to take a test. Whether it was positive or not, you had to stay off from work because you had the symptoms, right? So you had to take a test no matter what, but it didn't matter what the result was. Likewise, on the return, if you were symptom-free for X amount of time, even if you still pop for COVID on your test, as long as you said, hey, I took a COVID test, but it still comes positive, but I've been symptom-free for X amount of time.
Stay home?
No, then it was go back to work.
Oh, okay.
So the racket was that the test result didn't matter on the way out or the way in.
Well, in my wife's case, if you did not show proof that you got vaccinated, you had to wear a mask. And so you basically were, you talk about discrimination.
Yeah, for real.
In the stuff the way she felt going through there, it's like everybody looking at you like, oh, what's the matter with you? You didn't go get vaccinated? So there was so much that happened with it. I subsequently found out, I talked to another pharmacist, a smaller firm, this gal, the owner of it, and she said the big box retailers were buying all the ivermectin and quercetin up. Mm-hmm. And she had patients, especially with quercetin, like, say you're going on a trip to Africa or whatever. I mean, geez, old Pete, they take that medicine daily down there for, malaria. A very safe drug, another one. And she couldn't get it for any of her, because and she thought they were just buying it up just to hoard it and keep it out of the hands of people, period.
I bought a bunch of all that stuff. I had a little inside person, and I still have it now because just in case, because I just don't. After COVID, I don't trust these guys anymore at all, because there's certain super obvious stuff, right? Where, for example, Joe Rogan gets COVID. He has it for 2 days. He's barely sick. He makes a short video where he says, he's not. He was famously unvaccinated, and they were blaming him for not letting other people get vaccinated. He stayed alone by himself. He isolated himself. He took quercetin, hydroxychloroquine. What's the other one? Ivermectin. And he looked great, and he was fine. It was over. He's also a fit guy for his age. He doesn't have any health issues. It was fine, right? Then CNN literally makes a video of it. They take that exact video, make him look sick in it, and change the coloring of it and everything like that. Label it horse paste. Joe Rogan, far-right podcaster, takes horse paste and all this stuff. And then I talk to people I know and love after that, and they're literally saying, oh, horse paste and blah, blah, blah. And you saw how it affected everyone's minds. Like, that narrative of Joe Rogan took horse paste and he's a terrible far right person, which he's not. He never voted Republican in his life until last year.
His show, for crying out loud.
He said he was going to vote for Bernie. So this whole far right COVID denier, anti-vaxxer, yada yada yada. I learned COVID was my eye opener of like, okay, it's like you said earlier, Dave. If the media is saying something, if they're going hard on something, and this is what all you're hearing, and then if you go talk to your neighbor and your neighbor says it, and then you go to work and somebody else says it, then you know that's the narrative that's being pushed, and that's the one you should be questioning, the one that everyone's saying, and so I wonder if we're going to get, I don't know, I don't think we're big with our 680 subscribers, big enough to get pulled off YouTube, but we're going to try today. So I wanted to pick back up with saying we want to make sure that we say that COVID was real, like some vaccines are important to public health, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
I had COVID. It was mostly, Mike had it. It was mostly, I would call it digestive, and it gave me anxiety, and it made it hard for me to sleep. I had anxiety. It was hard for me to sleep, and I had horrible digestive issues. But what I found so strange and scary about that time was that I could look on the FDA website and see that, they were saying that the vaccine was on the FDA website. It was saying that the vaccine was experimental, and they were saying that antigen test didn't work. But then everything you could literally go on the FDA website and see this. But then everything in the news and everything that everyone was saying and everything on social media was the exact opposite. This test works. The vaccine is safe. And you can watch montages of the vaccine is safe. The vaccine is safe. Anti-vaxxer, this and that. Get vaccinated. Get vaccinated.
Rhetoric. Oh, it's the rhetoric that's going to get you.
Yeah.
Correct. And then and I experienced it in my own life where people around me, people around me in my life were pressuring me and trying to make me feel guilty, right? And I had my brother who lives in Canada ended up with myocarditis. So at the time, this was 3 months after the vaccine came out. That's the only data point I had, and I leaned into that hard. It's like, my brother got myocarditis. He has the same DNA as me, and I'm not getting that vaccine. I'm sorry. At the time, I was very healthy, fit, young, ate healthy. Like there was no reason. And then the distortion of numbers. I'm sorry, I can't. The distortion of like numbers, basically focusing on death tolls versus focusing on like who actually is dying from it and whatnot, was really manipulative and that kind of thing. So anyway, during that time, during COVID, everyone had a lot of time to be home and like sit around and like wait and look into this stuff. I started having to avoid COVID altogether. That's when I really started watching some of these YouTube content creators, Jimmy Corsetti, Ben van Kerkwyk. And that's when I rediscovered sort of my passion for ancient history, because I've been into this stuff for decades, right? I was wondering what were you doing during that time, like to kind of stay sane?
Well, of course you had the Q stuff going, so that was one. But then, yeah, I was still doing, research on, I was actually sort of migrating back into more of the ancient history type stuff. And it was more, for me, it was like, okay, if we have been lied to about a bunch of stuff, not just 9/11, but potentially, a ton of stuff. How far back does it go? Number one, why would they do it? Who might be doing it? And then is there something in the future coming? I mean, there's just I was just getting all these different questions in my mind that then led to me digging and learning, and then the more you learn, you try and somebody that's, had their light bulb go off and they want to understand it, and you're like, oh, holy shit, well, this is going to take more. You start you start dabbling in all these different rabbit hole areas and trying to connect the dots, but you can't do it in 10 minutes.
No.
So no, you mentioned Ben van Kerkwyk. Early on, it was shortly after he got up and running. I was really fascinated with what he was doing. Ben Davidson, the Sun Weatherman, that was another one. He was actually still living just outside of Columbus. He's out in Colorado now, ready to roll when the crap hits the fan. But he was another. But to Ben's credit, it was like, man, this guy is doing a fantastic job of, the Serapeum was one of them. I think Brian Forster might have been the first guy that through him, I'm like, I'd never heard of the Serapeum before. And it's like, well, how come I've never heard of this place before? And you see these massive boxes. But Ben's angle there and how he handled not just the boxes at Serapeum, but also the whole thing with the jars. I mean, he was really instrumental in getting that stuff going.
Yes.
And so it was really cool. It was actually the first cosmic when I first personally met. We had talked, but that was the first time I'd met him. And I'm like, and then we start doing these trips to Egypt. I was like, oh man, I've got to get in on one of those. And then of course COVID was going on, and it was like every time I'd want to go on a trip, I'd think, okay, all the flying issues and all that will be done surely by then. Nope, another 6 months. It's like, crap, come on. So finally got to go on one of those last February. But yeah.
Very cool. And I same with me watching Ben van Kerkwyk and do the Serapeum, the tube drills, and the vases was like, for me, all three are smoking guns of lost ancient technology that aren't explained properly by Egyptology, archaeology in general. And so I really wanted to hear, because when you go to Egypt, right, and you buy a run-of-the-mill tour, you're going to get a run-of-the-mill, narrative on. You're going to get the Egyptological narrative, right? Always been my dream, and Mike and I plan to eventually. We're just trying to decide if we're going to do it with Robert Schoch or the Land of Chem or the Ben van Kerkwyk and her guys, or even Brian Forster. We'll pick one. But what was it like going to Egypt with Ben van Kerkwyk, and what was the size of the group? And tell us about the whole thing.
Sure. So I went. It was February of last year, and it was it was fully packed trip. It was like 26 days, something like that, if I remember right. And that might have included a little bit of flying time in there. But I think I signed up for that trip almost a year in advance. And
you have to, right? They booked out.
Yeah. I mean, as soon as he announced it, I was in. I'm like, no, I'm in this. I'm definitely. And there were a couple prior, again, COVID earlier than that, and it was more me being concerned about, well, I don't want to risk having to, have to get vaccinated or some bull crap like that in order to do the thing and have it blown out of the water. So anyway, we had maybe, and I'll tell you what, I can't say enough. If you want to go to Egypt, just Ben's your guy, period. With Youssef Alyan, you cannot. I mean, and on our trip, the Snake Brothers dudes were along, Russ and Kyle. And side story to that, Kyle's wife, Laura, we ended up subsequently chatting, and now we're doing this thing for kids, focused, educating kids on some of this stuff. Anyway, we can talk more about that later. There were probably, I'm thinking there was maybe 20 some of us. It was not a real big group. And you get there, first off, never been to Egypt. I flew into the UK and then into Cairo, and the size of the city, I was like just blown away. Cairo, massive. I mean, there's like over 20 million people in that city. And but I'm telling you, the people are the friendliest people you could ever imagine. can't say enough about the people. The group that we had, there's a Telegram page that was set up specifically for our group, leading up to the trip and during the trip and then after the trip. And to this day, there's a lot of us that are still on there communicating. But the beauty on our trip, we had 10 private access, special access, which I think was the most that he had up to that point in time on any of his trips. And when I say special access, we went down, for example, we had the whole the Great Pyramid to ourselves, the entire pyramid. Nobody else was there on the grounds, period, for 2 hours.
Wow.
So we got into every bit of the pyramid, down the subterranean chamber, and in there's I don't know what the name of it's a small shaft that you can barely fit into, and the gate was open, and that usually there's a gate covering that thing. It's weird down. I mean, I could talk a whole podcast about this stuff, but so there was.
And you got some great footage and some bite-sized clips on your YouTube channel, which we'll link below this episode.
Oh, thank you. So, and I'll tell you, I had over 2,800 images. Don't ever, and I'm telling you, if you're using any kind of a storage company to store all your video and pictures on, don't use pCloud. I can't say that enough. The bastards, my account got zapped. It's a long story, but they didn't save the data. I'm talking within a couple of weeks of finding out what happened and trying to rectify it. Gone, permanently gone. 2,800 pictures. In video, anything I did with my cell phone, gone. I do have, thank goodness, I had a side video recorder that I've got a ton of video on that thing that I now have to re-upload. I've closed my account and I'm in the process right now of re-uploading it to a different iCloud account. So, but yeah, oh my God. Yeah, just go through the videos there that I took. I put some out there. I got to go put a lot more. I've got a ton, but I mean, Yusuf has great relations with all the guards you go visit.
That's the trip. Key.
Yeah. And I mean, you're going 24 hours a day. Well, I shouldn't say 24 hours, but it's a busy, full pack schedule. And we went from one end of the Nile to the other. So we were basically up and down the entire country of Egypt. And there's so much. I'll tell you what's so. All the video you want and learn. It's not until you're there, especially the Giza Plateau with the pyramids, the Sphinx, the Valley Temple. When you're there and you can visually sort of get a good layout or a good feel for how everything is located in context with, where the pyramids, the Sphinx and everything. We were down in the Valley Temple. So just picture where the three pyramids are. You're on this gradual slope down, and it's a causeway that literally, there's no doubt in my mind, it's a roof a massive stone roof that we're walking on, and there's stuff, a shitload of stuff underneath there that's not being explored yet that should be. Trevor Grassi, by the way, that he's going to be at the Cosmic Summit. He's going to be there. Can't wait to meet him. His YouTube channel's becoming one of my favorites. He's getting into some of these areas that no one that I know has gotten into and documented. But anyway, so when you're going down the causeway past the Sphinx to the Valley Temple, you're in the Valley Temple area. I'm looking at these massive granite blocks like, oh my gosh, and the erosion on them. I'm like, how could they have gotten there? This is not just wind erosion. And so we're sitting down there, and Russ asked me, he says, well, he called me the resident geologist. Well, I didn't get a degree in geology, just know that. And I explained that to the group when we were introducing each other.
3/4.
He wanted my opinion on this, and the first thing out of my mouth was this ever underwater? I'm looking at it because it's like there's so much evidence that this stuff was underwater for a period of time, not just briefly.
Mhm.
And he said, I don't know. And so then I got back. My big thing since I've been back from that trip is to try and understand the geology of the area. And Randall has been putting out some recent video talking about the geology. And one of the fascinating things a lot of people don't know is the Amazon. Picture this. At one point, it was cut in like the Grand Canyon. I mean, we're talking that much of a cut, but it's just over the years has filled up with a bunch of sediment. So it's just I don't know. And then you wonder why you're out there, and everywhere you go, like the Serapeum. I give you an example. You're out of nowhere. You're just walking across the sand, and out of nowhere pops this little hole in the ground, and boom, you're going down into the, all the stuff cut out of the bedrock. And I'm sitting there, and I took a camel ride to the Serapeum, and the thing I couldn't get on my mind is like, how much shit other shit's buried around here. I mean, it just looks like there's stuff everywhere that either people know about it and they're not telling anybody, or it's there yet to be explored. And
that's what Adam Young said on our show. You watched that episode recently, but he said if there's one Serapeum, maybe there's more. And for me, I don't know about you guys, because there's a lot of smoking guns, but the Serapeum is to me the most fascinating place in Egypt, because there's no good explanation of how they got those boxes down there.
No.
And there's no good, and they're absolutely perfect in like the way they've been carved. They're as close to as perfect as you can get, inside and outside. The angles are amazing, and I think it's laughable. And Ben points this out, that they attribute them to the dynastic Egyptians because they have these basically chicken scratch hieroglyphs carved on them. And it's like, if they made those boxes, why would they chicken scratch hieroglyphs on them like that? You'd think they'd be able to, like, I don't know, it's just crazy to me. And so for me, what was it like being down there in the Serapeum? Like, I know that it's probably, you got to just kind of be there. It's hard to see a video or pictures, but is there a feeling down there? Like, what was it like down there?
Well, well, first off, before I forget my thought, this is something that somebody should research. I would like to know, when you go, like, at the Cairo Museum, and I think a lot of the stuff that was at the Cairo Museum has been transferred over to the Grand Egyptian Museum, which is the new one. I don't know if they're going to keep the Cairo one open and put other stuff. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, you see all these other boxes. There were huge boxes in the pyramids. The Menkaure one was supposedly lost at sea on a ship. They took, the British, I think it was the British Museum, was the one that commissioned taking the box out of the Menkaure pyramid, which is the smaller of the three, and then it got so far across the sea, and boom, the ship was lost. Go figure. Ridiculous. But I sit here and I half wonder if all of these things weren't repurposed, and clearly there. You see video and pictures of these, just the Serapeum boxes. When you see them, even though you look at them, it's like, wow, look at that. But when you're in person and you're looking at these things, it's like, how the fuck did they do this? I mean, and then fit them in. So when you come in there, I mean, it's not like you're way down in the earth when you're in the bedrock. You gradually walk down so far, and you're in there. And they've done a nice job of putting like a wooden floor over what had been existing before. And there are areas where you can sort of see through the floor to the actual bed.
Sure.
But when you're looking at this, it's like you're in a cave. Well, it's not like I mean, it would have been like a cave without all the metal, the newer stuff,
lighting, stuff like that.
Yeah. But it's like, okay, now where did they make them? I mean, all these questions are coming out of your mind. It's like, did they make them somewhere else in the but how did they transport them down in there and get them into these niches? I mean, with hardly any room to spare. And or did they just make them right there? Did they just mind-boggling? Or is there some other, I don't know, access that we're not aware of? I mean, there's one or two areas that have like a metal door. That is that one blocking the way. I can get my glasses on. I can't see what you guys.
That's the one that's basically stuck in the.
Oh yes, yeah.
And it's like,
yeah,
how the hell did they like?
Look how
they did measure. I don't know if people have calculated how much like manpower, pulling power you would have needed to have down there, or elephants or whatever, like in order to just drag that thing down the hallway. There's no space. Like when you're up there close to that thing, you can really see. You cannot slide a body through there, can you?
Yeah, you can get through there. You can, believe it or not, you can make it around the side. The one side, you can make it around. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but still, I mean.
Oh, I had one. There's one of them. The lids, and I may have sent a picture of that where there's a couple of the folks in our group that were standing in front of it. So they're standing, and you can see it's. I mean, the lid is higher than their heads. That particular one, a couple of the guards. You want in? You want up and in? I'm like, oh hell yeah! so there's video somewhere on my channel where I actually climb up and get. It might be on my X account, I think, is where I maybe posted those. But I climb up and into the box, and that's the other thing that comes into play is, okay, they had a clear knowledge of the different rock structures in how they worked acoustically. That's my opinion, and I don't think I'm too far off on that. You get in there. It's not just here. It's also when you're at the great inside the pyramid, in the king's chamber and all. The way your voice resonates and you hit certain tones, and you can really detect where, oh, this is set for that tone right there. Which makes you wonder what for. I mean,
oh come on, Dave! It was for the sacred bulls. Okay, they were burying sacred bulls there. Yep, and they were worship bulls, and that was where they buried them. I mean, come on, there's no other explanation than that. I mean,
part of an elaborate system of rituals and regalia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's just ridiculous that they go through all that work and expend all that technology and whatever the hell they were doing down there in that Serapeum to bury some fucking bulls. It doesn't do it. And then have they ever even found a bull in any of those things? I don't even know. That's something I'll have to look into.
I don't know that. That's a good question. I don't know that. Frankly, I could care less.
I mean, it's not really what happened. Maybe and if they did, maybe the dynastic Egyptians were like, "Hey, maybe we should bury our bulls in here." But like, that's not why not why they were built. I mean, to me, that's obvious.
Yeah. That's another thing. It'd be cool to see. I know Matt's got some. Both those guys have. Matt's using Max, I think, to do some analysis on some of his. This is like some. Matt Bell has actually an interview with this guy. I think he's a nuclear scientist or something to that effect, and he's doing an analysis on any kind of elements or chemicals or anything that might have been residue type stuff left on the jars, those precision jars, vases, whatever you want to call them, to trying to determine how these things were cut, formed, manipulated, or whatever. It'd be interesting to do the same thing to some of these boxes. I mean, just to know, well, did they use similar techniques to trying to determine, was this potentially the same culture that whoever it was that made them, and would they use? I mean, words don't do it justice. I mean, that's all I'll say. When you see the size of these things, it's just like, oh, and they're one pieces of stone. The lid's one, cut, and then the box itself, the base.
Wow, I got to get down there. I guess I have to go with Ben now. That was probably going to be my first choice anyway, but it was going to come down to timing and money anyway. But
Yeah.
Ben seems to be the guy. You've been down the Osiris shaft too, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. Now,
Tell us about that.
so you basically go down 3 levels, and this is the other thing. So that's right there on the causeway. That's, that runs the length from the pyramids down to the Valley Temple. In all through there, you see wired grates, and you look down. It's like, wow, what's down there? Well, what's down there? All off limits. But at least they've got the Osiris shaft open. They did. I mean, you have to have special access to get in there. Now, we were told, and I probably shouldn't say this, but we were told we're not supposed to film down there. And I thought, well, what the heck? I'm here once. I got to film. So I'll play dumb. And I go, so I think I've got video on my channel. Yeah, no, I do on that. You go down a ladder, and it's a rickety type of thing, and you can see where there's an older one that had been there, and they've sort of updated it, but still the newer one, it's a bit, and man, it's straight down. So you go down and you get to the first level. Well, the video I have is getting down that first level, and the minute I turn around, there's one of the guards, no filming, and so that I cut the film. But then you go down, you go down another level, and then you go down the third. The second, there's 3 boxes, 2 on the second level, and then there's a third at the bottom. And it's underwater, and I couldn't really get a good view of that one. You'd literally probably have to wade yourself out into the water to see the lid of that one. But again, it's like, how'd they get them down there? I mean, you're way down in the bedrock. And then the other question, with the whole this SAR scanning stuff, it'll be interesting to see what comes of that at the Cosmic Summit. But it starts making you wonder, well, is there another level down there in that shaft that's underwater that you literally would have to wade out and get in? They have, over the years, they've sort of sucked a lot of the water out of there, because in the past it would be a common swimming hole, where the water levels were much higher. So I don't know. I mean, it's really, it is cool as hell. But again, it's like, what the heck is this for? Not real big. I mean, you go down, you're on a level. There's just a small walk area, and you got a couple niches, with the 2 boxes, and then, of course, then you get down to the lowest level, as far as I know, lowest level.
I'm trying to find the picture, but I wasn't able to find it. But apparently they did a SAR scan of the Osiris shaft to sort of corroborate the data that they did on the Khafre pyramid.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, but so they were able to basically see the Osiris shaft with the SAR scan, the same way they were able to see whatever the heck's under the Khafre pyramid. I just wasn't able to find it. So was there like your trip to Egypt with Ben? Was there like one highlight, one place, one monument, one, I don't know, statue that you were just like, holy shit, like more than any other one, or what?
Oh my gosh.
There's so much stuff. 28 days, you're up and down the Nile.
You're just, I'll tell you, this is what's going to happen when you go there. You're going to go there and you're going to be like, all right, I got to plan a second trip back here. Because your first, it's really, and I spent most of my time, I'll get your question here in a minute, but I spent most of my time trying to get footage of everything while I was there. Because I figured, okay, at least be able to watch this back and relive it. But I wanted to make sure I was getting it on film. And your first time there, it's like, you're overwhelmed. I mean, I don't know how to put it. It's like, wow, I'm not only just getting to see one of these places that I'd love to see, I'm getting to see all of this stuff. and every one of them has something intriguing about it. I mean, but the thing that stood out to me, and then you come back and you're opening up all kinds of tabs, trying to learn more about different stuff, different aspects of it. For me, it's a lot of the geological side of it, but you'll see things like where something was constructed. I just use a box as an example, and clearly, or if you're at the oh, well, a number of these places, you'll see this more recent technology that was used where wooden slats were used in a manner to split granite blocks, and so a perfectly good, what could have been one of these massive granite boxes, somebody else more recently came along, quarried it, and cut it up for their own use. And then that starts to bring in the question, well, okay, look at all these more recent hieroglyphics that scribbled on stuff. Clearly, it's not the same technology that was used to make the existing piece or the initial piece. So, what happened there? You just come back with a bunch more questions. But I mean, I can't really pick one out other than, I mean,
The whole thing?
the pyramid probably for me. Again, that's another one. You just can't. I came out of that thing, and it was an evening, and there was another guy on our trip, and he was just standing there, and I stood there, and we're just both sort of quiet. I'm sitting there looking at trying to calculate in my mind. I'm looking at the first row, the first course of stone, just one row of tons. How long would it have taken just to put one row on the first course of stone in? Just the first one. In the time to not just that, the engineering involved, the project planning involved. I mean, there's so many red flags. It's like, did the dynastic Egyptians really build this thing, or did somebody else? And where are all the hieroglyphs? They're all missing on the pyramids. Why? I mean, I don't know. A lot of questions.
Yeah, so I guess what you're saying is it's not one thing, it's the whole thing, and it's just you walk away with one big question, which makes me wonder, like, how Egyptologists, not all of them, and not all archaeologists, all that stuff. I want to make sure I say that, but like how some people can be so certain, like we saw Zahi Awaz on Rogan. He's so certain. These people are so certain they knew exactly how these people do it. When 99.9% of people in the world, they walk over, they take one look at this stuff in person, and they go, "What the fuck?
Yeah.
How did they do this?" And none of it makes sense.
Yeah, and I think Ben has said on more than one occasion that folks like Zahi Hawass are sort of doing the Egyptians a disservice. They clearly have one hell of a storied past that is sort of being covered up for some reason. And again, is it because folks have their own turf, like Zahi, and he's protecting it? I don't know. I mean, why not be open to the possibility that, they were Egyptian, or at least they were living in your country. It may not necessarily have been the dynastic Egyptians, but it would have been somebody that lived there, that would clearly. And I'm not trying to discredit dynastic Egyptians. Don't get me wrong. It's just and maybe they did do a lot of this. I don't know. I mean, but when you're down there, you're like, gosh, the math's not adding up here. The tools they had available, something is wrong. Where'd the tools go? They didn't use copper and chisel, copper chisels to do a lot of the stuff that I saw. There's no way in hell.
I think that argument's been dead for decades. It just gets, it's it's one of those things. So I'm glad you were able to share that. Like I said, we will link your video and your YouTube channel down below. Something I wanted you to comment on before I wanted to move into like archaeology for kids and stuff like that was you had mentioned earlier that you got into the Q stuff and you were like, something's happening. And you mentioned like something's happening globally, like to people. And like, that's where the moniker, The Great Awakening, right? That's where the YouTube channel and the name comes from, is you believe that humanity is in the middle of an awakening, and we're right. Could you go into that a little bit for us?
Yeah, that's actually, so and again, that it was doing a bunch of research, a ton of research, and I think this is my opinion. Everything I've learned to this point tells me that we have had a lid on, for whatever reason, a lot of advancements. I'll just use Tesla's stuff as an example. Don't you find it strange that it was Trump's uncle who was with MIT, and he was the one that was part of the team that took the Tesla documents? What a strange coincidence there. And what technology might Tesla have come across? For example, free energy, that we are aware of, and it's intentionally been kept from us. I mean, that's just one possibility. You go back and you look at the whole medical system, and who founded it? Rockefeller and Carnegie. It literally dictates if you want to become a doctor, this is the coursework you're going to take. And they basically said, okay, this stuff here, we're going to consider this alternative medicine. And that is not going to be taught to doctors. And now look what's happening. How many of the old timer cures, remedies are now, cooking with butter now is a good thing.
Right. Eggs are good for you.
Yeah.
Man, remember when eggs used to give you a heart attack? Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so petroleum substitute was supposed to be better than butter.
Yeah. But look at like
God.
Then you wonder. You look at like there's a lot of health benefits from marijuana, psilocybin mushrooms from the mental side of things. Look at the research they're doing. A lot of promising research with ivermectin in cancer. So and just think, okay, the drug companies can't patent this stuff. They can't patent it. They can't make a buck. They're out of business. And look at, can you imagine healthcare alone? If we find out there's all this stuff that has intentionally been kept from us, all in the name of money. I mean, there's just all of these different things. And it on the surface, it appeared to me, you know what? I think we're about ready to blow the lid on all this stuff. And it's going to be literally a great awakening. And a great time to be alive and witness all of this darkness being broken away by light. That's just me. So
let's make it happen.
And I think, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I totally think too that I worry that our planet is a lot more turbulent than we're being told. And when by turbulent, I mean we go through near extinction, cataclysmic events periodically, some of them worse than others. Ben Davidson's work and others appears to more and more research showing that we have, basic every geomagnetic events, excursions, if you will, roughly every 6,000 years. The 12,000 year ones are the worst. We happen to be about 12,000 years in from the last one, and we're at the point of going into the next. That's Ben Davidson's, credit to him, Sun Weatherman. That's his graphic. Yeah.
I've been seeing more and more of this is blowing up on X right now. Supposedly 2030 to 2050, we're going to have basically a geomagnetic cataclysm, for lack of a better. It's going to be a cataclysm because we're geomagnetic dependent as a society. So we're not going to have satellites. We're not going to have computers, at least for a period of time. It's going to be turbulent.
We'll start once the internet gets fried.
Yeah, basically, basically, what basically happens is the magnetic poles are in the process of flipping.
Yeah.
And you can look at you can look at a map and see how it's really speeding up. There's some, Ben's one. There's a couple of scientists actually that are thinking that our sun may micronova, and it's part of this whole geomagnetic excursion that occurs. And then you've got folks that are there's this what was it? What's his name? The I got to remember the guy's name. He was a cosmonaut. It was an effect that he witnessed when he was in space. It was basically this wing nut. I can't remember his name now. Jenny. Anyway, he witnessed this wing nut. It was spinning in space, and then it would instantly flip, and then flip back again, and flip back. But it's called an effect after his name. I don't recall his name off the top of my head. At any rate, there's now folks researching the possibility that the planet actually does that when our magnetic poles flip, that the planet itself will do this flip real quick, and it will cause the crust to break away, and then it'll flip right back again in place. And when it does that second flip, that the countries will be realigned in different positions on the globe. Now, does that happen? Who knows? Or is it some variant of that it's really bad? But before the event occurs, leading up to it, you're seeing things like we're getting a lot more of the aurora at southern latitudes. It shouldn't be seeing that. I mean, I saw them twice here in Ohio last year, and that's the first time since 2005 that I've ever seen them.
The guy's name was Zankabakov or something like that. I don't know how to say it.
It's like, I think Johnny Bekoff, Jim Bekoff, or Johnny Bekoff, something like it. It's a Russian cosmonaut. Yeah, but it's effect named after him.
We'll flash it on the screen during the interview.
Okay, yeah, cool. But there's a couple of guys out there that are doing a lot of work on researching different civilizations and when they may have experienced. The Nobulart is one of them on Twitter. Does a phenomenal job on this, but researching when different civilizations seem to have fallen through time and trying to piecemeal together, does it appear that there was some kind of a massive some kind of an event on Earth that may have triggered some of these downfalls in different civilizations through time. So anyway, which is sort of what I'm digging into, was there in fact maybe some big event that wiped out something that like an Atlantis that may have, and if it was so massive, then no wonder we don't have next to any evidence at all of something existing pre-Ice Age. And is there the chance that something's going to happen in the future? Or is that why certain folks are, trying to reduce the population so that they can go to their safe spots? And then you got all these higher end wealth folks that are building their bunkers, that sort of thing. So I don't know. Good question. So.
Yeah, it is a good question. And it's one of our favorite things to talk about on the show is lost ancient civilization and the possible cataclysm that probably caused that, whether it was a solar event or a cosmic
comet fragments, meteor. Yeah.
Magnetic pole shifting is not really controversial. We know that it happens. We can tell. Cataclysmic continental realignment, crust slipping pole shifting is a bit more controversial.
Oh, definitely.
The famous book is Charles Hapgood, which Albert Einstein famously helped him revise his calculations, revise the book.
Yeah.
They were trying to calculate all this stuff. And I wonder if, let's say that every time the magnetic field of the Earth flips, sometimes it flips harder or worse than others. Sometimes it goes to zero, other times it doesn't. Maybe when it gets extremely weak on a 1 in 10 or a 1 in 100 flip, maybe there is some like electrostatic forces holding the continents down onto the mantle.
Yeah.
And when it gets too loose, they do start sliding around like way faster than who knows?
Yeah. There's also, if you're not familiar with it, it was a book put out in 1966, I think somewhere around there, by Chan Thomas called The Adam and Eve Story, that the CIA declassified in 2013 or somewhere thereabouts.
Right, yeah. There's an episode of Y-Files about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it paints this very picture. It's like, well, why in the heck did they? And I think the version they released was sort of a scrubbed down version. So, but why would they classify that thing?
I can almost recite the beginning from memory.
Makes you wonder.
I'll try not to.
Yeah.
It's why Cosmic Summit is so cool of an event. It's because it brings people who like are willing to think about this, because at the beginning of our conversation, Dave, we talked about paradigm shifting things, right? For a lot of people, it would be difficult for them to live their day-to-day lives knowing that we're at the end or the beginning of some of these cycles. Maybe we're in a cosmic shooting gallery that could smoke the Earth at any second. Maybe the sun is going to burp and just fry us all, or maybe it's just going to fry the grid, whatever. It's hard for people to think about, but I think it's part of the Great Awakening that you're talking about is humanity coming to grips with the fact that this planet isn't static, our civilization isn't fixed, we don't know everything, and we better start working together and getting to the same curiosity so that we can figure this stuff out. And we better stop holding this. We better stop giving authority figures the ability to hold this information hostage, right? And hold it and claim governance over our past, governance over the future technologies and stuff. It's done. The jig is up, right, Mike?
We as a species have to stop willfully abandoning our ability to use reason, the very reason that sets us apart as a species. We all too frequently, just trust that authority institution, authority figure, or better yet, I figured out that my parents' authority institution was wrong, and now I trust in a different authority institution just as blindly, which is just as wrong. Golly, people.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. And I'm glad you said that, Mike, because it actually good transition into the next thing I wanted to have Dave talk about, which is the next generation, right? Because I'm a little bit worried about these guys, but you've taken an interest in kind of teaching critical thinking at local middle schools about archaeology and geology specifically. How did you get into that? Did you just decide one day to do it? Did somebody ask you to do it? Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, so my daughter was she's 19 now, but she I think she was in elementary school, and maybe somehow I got in over to her school and gave a talk on the ancient Native American cultures, the Hopewell, the Adena, and all that lived here in Ohio, and the kids just lapped it up, and I took in some of the artifacts that I have in my collection and passed them around, because I'm a big believer in having some hands-on stuff.
Sure.
To make something interesting. And so I had a blast doing it. So from that, then when she entered middle school, I asked her, why don't you talk to your history teacher? I'd like to come in and talk now this is before I went to Egypt, either about Egypt or the native, any of them. So I actually did a talk that involved sort of the similarities between what's being found here in Ohio, the different stone artifacts, and how much they're extremely similar to what's over in the pre-dynastic and even into the dynastic period over in Egypt. And then, which then led into the building of the Great Pyramid. Now, it's so funny because the first time I did this, my wife is like, you better not be going over there talking conspiracy theory stuff. Hey, our daughter's in that class.
QAnon.
So I said, no. And what I did, I set the whole discussion up like it was a whodunit type of thing. And what I wanted to do was, present, here's what we think happened, but what if maybe this happened? And I pulled up the classic clip. I think it was Lehner and a couple of the Egyptologists where they're taking a copper tube drill and they're,
Oh my gosh,
they're getting nowhere with it, trying to do a core, a core.
Ridiculous.
But anyway, so I took stuff over there and did that, and it went over the kids, and then I ended up giving them, here's a couple YouTube channels, some good ones. But the thing that I found was, gosh, there's nothing out here for kids. And I'm thinking, man, somebody needs to do that. And then, now this is a few years ago. And the funny thing was, after I did that particular presentation, the teacher came up to me and he said, I never knew half this stuff. I'm talking about the Serapeum and stuff like that that no one is taught any of that stuff. And he said, would you mind coming in here for a whole day doing for 2 days doing an entire day's worth of all his classes? I said, yeah, no, I'd love to do. I mean, to me, it's like, it's a blast. And it's so much fun to get, because these kids are just loving it. Now, here's the thing. That's how I got into that. And I do these presentations. Both, I'll split them up and I'll do one or the other. But mostly to middle schoolers, because I think it's good if middle schoolers or the kids that I'm teaching have an understanding of the Mohs scale of hardness as a base, so they understand, how to have the tools that are available, and something needs to be harder to cut something, else. But then more recently, when I was over in Egypt, I mentioned earlier, the Snake Brothers were there, Brothers of the Serpent. And so that's where I met Laura Allen. That's Kyle's wife. And we got to talking. And then it was actually last year at the Cosmic Summit. We really got to talking, and she said, I really want to move forward with this stuff. She had the same idea to try and educate. She's got some young kids herself. And would you be interested in sitting down with her and doing this stuff? So all through this past summer, we have a team of about 5 of us that are working on this stuff. And so she just launched the Snake Bros for Kids YouTube channel.
I saw that,
yeah, maybe 2 months ago. So the first one was a series of like intro videos. And then there's one on there where I do an introductory thing on Egypt. That one she just dropped maybe weeks ago.
You did it?
Yeah, it's
Very
it's
cool.
me. Yeah, she did it. She put all the video stuff together and did a phenomenal job. She's really, I can't say enough. She's putting her heart and soul into this, and the team she's put together is really good people. But yeah, this is missing. I mean, there are some channels now that have popped up, but to just even go around locally, you guys could probably do the same thing down where you're at. You don't have to, you know what I mean? There's somebody we put that ancient, it was like an introductory thing to ancient Egypt. And one of those damn archaeologists, I mean, he's seriously a professional archaeologist out of Kentucky, says, oh, brainwashing the kids young, are you? Or something ridiculous like that.
He commented that on the YouTube video?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. On the I believe it was on the X channel, and I don't know I hope it got deleted off there, but it's like, come on, really? I mean, anyway, but no, not to, and on a sour note with that, but I think it's a fascinating thing that she's putting together, and there's going to be a lot of really fun, interesting videos coming up. So
yes, it will inspire a generation of open-mindedness who's not concerned about defending predefined institutional narratives.
Yeah. I think at one point, I think Randall was looking to do something similar to set up some coursework type stuff. I don't know if it's necessarily geared towards kids or not, but that's enough. I need to get on some of Randall's tours. Dang it all. I keep talking about it.
So much
I
stuff to do,
definitely
so little time.
Yeah, I want to get out west. I really want to get out west and check out some of the Scabland stuff.
Yeah, I've watched so much of his content, but his episode of Cosmic Mondays coming out next Monday. It was wild to hear him talk about it to you in person, as if he's telling you like a bedtime story or something. It was great. I will link the Snake Bros for Kid channel below as well, because I think that's a fantastic idea, and I'm going to share that with my nephew, who's gonna love that. It's a good place to start wrapping up, because we started with how we were all pilled into thinking that these institutions were something we could believe in and trust, and then over time that trust has been eroded, right? And I think it's important for our generation to start properly educating the newer generation in a way that is not so closed-minded. It's not so appealing to authority, right? It's like gives these kids a license to ask some questions, because like we're not saying we know anything about like how they did that stuff. What we're saying is no one should know. This 4,000 years, 6,000 years ago, ancient Egypt, no one fucking knows, right? Like
you just need to question everything. Period.
Yeah.
You can't trust. I mean, you could take any individual person just real quick, and I guarantee you've had at some point in your life, probably a number of times, somebody that has lied to you, or it was not the person you thought they were. Then you magnify that into, oh, here's a political party that's doing this, and you could just keep amplifying it bigger and bigger, and it's like there's always going to be somebody that is feeding a bunch of disinformation, misinformation, or maybe it's the real truth. And the big thing to do is to question. I mean, question everything. People out there listen to me right now. Don't believe everything I've told you in this video. Go out there and do your own research. Don't trust it. I mean, you have to really do a lot of put some time into it. And unfortunately, we have the younger generation, I think, has a limited time span. They'll look at a headline and boom, that's all they take from it. And the mainstream media knows that, and they walk away thinking they know everything. And with my own daughter, I have to tell her, no, you need to go dig in, read it, understand it. Vet the person that put it out there. So
look at the other side of the story.
Yeah, it's a real psychological effect, though, when you believe that, okay, if everything's in the Associated Press must be good, and I start scrolling down and 8 out of 10 Associated Press related sources have the exact same headline, this must be a big deal. There's 8 different sources have it. Quite the case, folks. Look a little harder.
Yeah, that's why I'm worried about the kids, man, because these really, really, really smart social and computer engineers are basically designing these apps to brainwash kids, and that's how they design TV. That's how they design commercials. That's how they design game shows and news, like for your generation and ours. So they're doing the same thing, just with apps, right, and video games and things like that. And I'm not saying any of these things are bad, but you cannot look at something and hear it, and especially if the more mainstream it comes from, that's the more you should be asking questions about it. And I don't want to go too far back, but you mentioned the medical industry and how that kind of thing, and that's one of those ones where, like, I think is going to shake most people. Like, most people are going to be shaken by the idea that, wait, the food I've been eating that you said was healthy isn't? Wait a second, the sunscreen that I've been wearing actually gives me cancer. Stuff like that. The sun is good for me in moderation, right? This kind of stuff where doctors, like, you go to a doctor, they don't know anything about nutrition. They don't know anything about, some of them do. I'm not pooping on all doctors, but like for the most part, you go to a doctor, they diagnose you, they give you medication, that's it. Or they refer you to another doctor. Like you get very minimal information from a primary care doctor about like, what you should be eating and what you shouldn't. How much sun are you getting? Are you exercising? Do you go outside? Do you go for walks? This kind of thing. So we are in the middle of a great awakening. And I think some people are going to go in one direction and some people are going to go in another. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. But we get to meet again at Cosmic Summit, June 20th to the 23rd. Promo code Multiverse for 10% off your passes. You can hang out with Mike and Dave from
Mike and Dave squared.
Yeah, Mike and Dave squared, and all these other people, Snake Bros, Ben van Kerkwyk, and check out the website because this is what George Howard's doing is a start of something that like I think is going to just keep growing and growing and growing. And we're really excited to meet you, Dave, in person.
Yes.
And hang out.
Yeah.
And so thank you so much for coming on our show. Yeah.
A gigantic kudos to George for sticking his neck out, putting his money out there to put this thing on. I mean, and anybody that's watching this right now that's considering, I'll just watch it on, from home. I mean, I can't say enough. I'll tell you what, it is such a blast. It is, I mean, it's like home. I don't know how else to put it, but it's so funny. You two met on an elevator. Here you got Mike and Dave, a good friend of mine now, Mike Bucci. You'll meet him. We met 2 years ago. So there you go, Mike and Dave. We're the original Mike and Dave.
Awesome. We're not even the original Mike and Dave. I'm actually slightly disappointed, but I'm proud to learn that it's a tradition now.
So maybe there'll be a Mike and Dave will meet next year or this year, and we'll just keep going. We definitely need a picture of the four of us at Cosmic Summit, Mike and Dave.
Oh, for sure.
And Dave.
Yeah,
that would be great. That would be so cool. Man, it was so fun to have you on your show. Everyone, Dave's coming back. I think it's June 15th, something along those lines, for our live stream to hype up Cosmic Summit the week beforehand. But man, super fun discussion today. Thank you.
Likewise. Appreciate it. Fun time.
It was great to meet you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. We'll see you guys.